July's financial data was released on Wednesday, presenting an overall mixed picture. On the surface, social financing, M1, and M2, all showed improvements. The year-on-year growth rate of social financing rebounded to 9%, with a new increase of 1.2 trillion yuan, 400 billion yuan, more than the same period last year. M1 reached 5.6%, and M2 rose to 8.8%. It seems that funds are active and credit supply and demand are booming. However, after in-depth analysis, the truth is more complex. First, looking at social financing, the 9% growth rate mainly relies on the strength of government bonds. In July, new government bonds amounted to 1.2 trillion yuan, 600 billion yuan, more than the same period last year. If government bonds are excluded, the growth rate of social financing drops to 6%. The credit growth rate is only 6.8%, and the new credit even hit a record low, indicating that the credit performance of the private sector is weak. Looking at the credit side, both short-term and medium to long-term loans of residents and enterprises saw negative growth, with only corporate bills increasing by 870 billion yuan. This reflects the low willingness of the private sector to consume, buy houses, and make physical investments. Corporate medium to long-term loans even decreased for the first time since 2017, while the growth in bills is mostly due to banks' efforts to meet targets and the idle circulation of funds, rather than a reflection of real economic vitality. The growth of M1 and M2 is attributed to three reasons. First, the low base in July. Last year M1 was minus 6.6% at that time. Second, the increase in fiscal expenditure in July. The net fiscal expenditure was 430 billion yuan, more than the same period last year. Third, the positive performance of the stock market drove an increase in demand deposits of residents and enterprises. The rebound of M2 is also related to a significant increase of 2.1 trillion yuan in non-bank deposits, with an additional increase of 1.4 trillion yuan, showing signs of deposit relocation. Overall, the current economy presents a two colds and two hots scenario. The private sector is cold, while the government sector is hot. The real economy is cold, while the stock market is hot. Consumption, house purchases, and corporate capital expenditures are all underperforming. Economic fundamentals and their expectations have not improved significantly, and growth mainly relies on government bond issuance and investment. Fiscal expansion has not yet driven follow-up actions from residents and enterprises. The underlying reason is that residents' balance sheets have not been effectively repaired. The scale of stock market profits is far less than the impact of housing depreciation. Coupled with the gradual withdrawal of consumption policies, such as trade-in programs, consumption desire has weakened. Although there is a new policy to stimulate consumer loans through interest subsidies, for example, borrowing 200,000 yuan can save about 3,000 yuan. Residents' short-term loans in July were minus 380 billion yuan, indicating extremely weak willingness to take out consumption loans, and the policy effect is questionable. It is worth noting that the positive stock market has not yet driven economic recovery. If stock market profits fail to translate into consumption, the cycle may break, and multi-departmental coordination is needed. Currently, only fiscal policy is active, while the central bank has not significantly cut interest rates, which hinders the repair of residents' balance sheets and restrains consumption and house purchases. It is hoped that this situation will improve after the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates in September. In summary, July's financial data reveals the weakness and structural contradictions of the real economy. The effectiveness of policies remains to be seen, and a virtuous cycle between the stock market and the economy still needs to be cultivated.